Let's do a little bit deeper dive in the credentials and access management components. Now, because you're already experienced with AWS, you should already know what IAM is and what its components are. You should know the difference between users, groups, roles, and policies. And you should know the difference between a resource-based policy versus an identity-based policy. Now, if you don't know how to read JSON, I would spend some time learning how to read it. It's not too difficult, but it's used very extensively in a lot of the AWS services, and especially in policy definition. And you should also know this concept of services and actions and resources and how they play into IAM policies. There's a service in AWS called the Security Token Service, and it's a pretty handy service. It allows us to temporarily grant credential access to applications or users. And we can source those credentials from IAM, but we can also source from one of the federated options we have. Now, in contrast, Cognito is more designed to be used in mobile applications, and the Cognito SDK already has a lot of this security handling built into it. So let's take a look at our typical security flow here. We have an application. We're going to make a request to the identity broker. That identity broker is going to turn around and, in this case, look at our Active Directory. And we're going to authenticate against that, and we're going to fetch the authorizations. Then we're going to reach out to the Security Token Service and generate a token to represent that authentication and authorization. And we can hand that token over to our application, which then uses it to access a variety of AWS services if that original account had access. Now, as I said before, we can also use federation here and still generate a token, provided that we authenticate properly against one of those federated identity providers. So we can look at this in practice. There's a web identity federation playground that AWS provides. Now, I blurred out all the sensitive details here, but this is an example of where I was signing in to my Google Plus account, and then Google came back with an authorization token, shown here in green. Now, because we've already set up that federation with Google, we can use that token to, in turn, get a token from STS, using the function assume role with web identity. So you can see here, we presented the Google token, and we've now been given an AWS STS token. And that's going to allow us to do stuff on AWS. So in this case, we've used that STS token that we were given to request a list from an S3 bucket. Now, there's something known as a token vending machine concept, and it's a common way to issue temporary credentials for mobile application development. Now there's two typical modes. One is an anonymous mode, and that's really just used as a way to provide access to AWS services, and it doesn't really store any user identity. There's also the identity TVM, and that could be used for registration and login and keeping up with your user accounts. Now, AWS recommends that mobile developers use Cognito and the related SDK because it has all the functionality built in, and so we don't have to create a TVM concept. There's also a service on AWS called the AWS Secrets Manager. And this is a good way to store passwords or encrypted keys or anything that you want to keep under proverbial lock and key. Now, some companies have a vault. Maybe it's a physical vault, or maybe they use some software like LastPass or KeePass. And Secrets Manager aims to be an alternative for that. And what's nice is you can access those credentials or those passwords or whatever you store in there using an API that's really controlled with fine-grained access using IAM. A neat feature of Secrets Manager is that it will automatically rotate your RDS database credentials for MySQL, PostgreSQL, and Aurora. And it's certainly better than hard coding our credentials in scripts or applications.